Record on this computer. Okay, great. It's recording. Fine. Yesterday we saw few basics of what DHCP is, how DHCP functions. We saw what is DORA process. DORA process, I told discover, offer, request, acknowledge, DORA process. And we have few concepts to see in DHCP. You should know what is DHCP scope. You should know what is DHCP lease time and DHCP client table. Fine. This will help you in configuring any of the DHCPs. Fine. I told to start with, to give a basic idea of what DHCP is about, what we have discussed yesterday. DHCP is dynamic assigning of IP address. Yes, it is dynamic host configuration protocol which assigns IP address automatically to your computer. So you have a Wi-Fi modem. This is your Wi-Fi modem, or this can be your router. Fine. And say you have a lot of devices in your LAN. You have so many devices in your LAN. Say, for example, you have 50 devices in your LAN. You have 50 devices in your LAN and you want to assign IP address to all these 50 devices. So one way of assigning IP address is static IP assigning, wherein you will go assign IP address individually to all the devices. Yes. And how will you do that? We'll go to this and I'll go to properties, and in properties, I'll go to TCP IP v4 and click properties. And here, if I click use the following IP address, I enter one by one all these details, then that is static IP assigning. Right? This is okay in case if you have less number of computers, but in case if you have more number of computers, like the scenario what you are seeing here, 50 computers, what we can do, we can go for obtain IP address automatically. When you click this option, click OK, IP address will automatically get assigned to your computer from your modem. But we have few configurations which we have to do in our modem. That can be number one, the configuration which you'll be doing is DHCP should be enabled. That is point number one. Fine, you should enable DHCP and then you should set DHCP scope. What do you mean by scope? Scope is range. Scope is a range of IP address. You can mention it something like this: 192.168.1. It starts from 0. So you'll have an option to fill here and it goes till 192.168.1. You will have another option to fill your number here. So how many computers do you have in your network? You have 50 computers. So on a safer end, I will start from 0 and will give till 60. Why? When we give this, yes, it can assign 50 IP address to 50 computers plus 10 extra devices just in case if we need. Right? So this is DHCP scope. DHCP scope, it can start from this particular IP range, or to be more specific, we'll make it as 1, or you can make it as 2, or whatever you want. Fine. So the IP address will be assigned from 1.1 till 1.60. What do you have here? Fine. So this is DHCP scope which we have to configure, which we have to enter. And then coming to the lease time. What do you mean by lease time? Lease time, I told you this yesterday. When your computer is requesting, for an IP address from your modem, your computer is from your computer, it is requesting IP address to your modem. It will follow DORA process: discover, offer, request, and it's acknowledge. Yes. So when it is requesting, it will give its MAC address. I told this modem here will take its MAC address and it will link an IP address and it will assign this IP address back to the computer. Yes. Now, how long this MAC address will be linked with this IP address? What is the time frame for a MAC address to be linked with an IP address? That is lease time. Right? Just like how you lease your home, just like that, the time frame for which this particular MAC address is linked with this IP address is called lease time. Usually for wired connection, when you speak about wired connection, for wired connection, it can be for like 3 days. The connection can be for 3 days. For wireless, for Wi-Fi connections, it can be for 2 days. You can change this value. And for guest users, you will have it for 8 hours. This value is changeable. You can change these values as per your need. Fine. When you understand lease time, fine. When you understand lease time, now you will know. I hope you should have traveled in trains, and in railway station you have free Wi-Fi, or in airports, railway station or airports, we have free Wi-Fi, and it will have a limit. The limit is like you can use this Wi-Fi for only for 2 hours. So what will happen after 2 hours? 2 hours, when you try to connect, your device will not get connected to the same Wi-Fi. Why? Because they have set the lease time of the guest user to 2 hours. So any MAC address which is being assigned an IP address will only be able to access internet only for 2 hours. Fine. So this is with lease time. So lease time is the time frame for which we assign. We'll see where we are going to assign this. And later, the last one is DHCP client table. DHCP client table is where, yes, by using scope, you can limit the number of connections. Fine. You can limit the number of connections. Here we have only 50 computers. In case if instead of 60, if you give 50, what will happen? Only 50 computers will be able to access internet. If another computer, a new computer here, the 51st computer, if it is requesting with the help of DORA process for an IP address, no, the modem or the Wi-Fi DHCP will not be in a position to give or assign an IP address. Why? The DHCP scope has only 50 IP address. Fine. So you can limit the number of connections with DHCP scope. And okay, out of this, you will be doing this for your mobiles. Fine. In your mobile hotspot, you will say how many devices can connect. So you will give it as 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. This is not exactly DHCP, but something which is related to scope, so that you can connect only 5 computers and you cannot connect it back. And yes, in railway stations and airports, one attack what can happen is, in case if you change your MAC address and try to connect this, yes, very obvious it will get connected. Fine. For that, attackers can do MAC spoofing, which will change your MAC address and try initiating the connection again. Probably you'll get back your connection. Public Wi-Fi is not safe. Fine. So what is DHCP client table? DHCP client table is something like a generic table of the DHCP, which has details of the computer's name. You will have your computer name. It will have your MAC address. It will have the IP address. Right? IP address. And one more thing, what can be present is, and I request every participant to disable their cams. Fine. And you'll also have lease time here. So my computer's name will be Shanky. Shanky's PC and MAC address will be something, a number. IP address will be 192.168.1.3, and lease time, it will say how much lease time is left. So it will be in seconds. So it can be something like this many lease hours is left. So I can, from DHCP client table, I can see what devices are connected in my network, what all devices are using my internet, and they are connected to my network. Fine. So even if it is a modem or if it's a router, you will have a component embedded inside this. This is called a DHCP server, and this particular DHCP server is used for assigning IP address to all the devices in your LAN. Fine. I hope you understood this. Now we'll go for packet tracer. Let me show you this. Yes. So now we'll go for a wireless device. We'll go for, when you click router, switches, and wireless device, you will have a wireless device which is down here. So when you click this, you will have many wireless devices here at the bottom. You have so many wireless devices here. And the device which we are going to, you can choose any device, but we'll go for a basic device like this. Fine. You can choose this, or you can choose a home router. Anything is fine. So this is my wireless router or my modem. Fine. A wireless router or my modem. Now, what will happen? We'll choose a desktop. Laptops will connect, but we'll choose a desktop here. And it is very obvious the desktop what we are using here, it cannot connect to the Wi-Fi. It needs a Wi-Fi receiver. So I'll go here. I'll turn off my computer. I have a Ethernet cable here, Ethernet LAN port here. I'll remove this. And if you see here, I have this particular port WMP300N, which is a wireless module, which is a wireless receiver. So what I'll do, I'll take this and I'll put this here. So now my computer has a Wi-Fi receiver. I'll turn it on. I'll do the same here. I'll turn this off. I'll remove this. I'll keep this here, turn it on. As soon as I turn it on, the computer tries to search for IP address. So let's go to the desktop configuration, IP configuration. It's in DHCP. So it is assigned with the IP address. This IP address is called a garbage value IP address. Why? Because in case if in DORA process, if your computer is not able to assign, or if it is not able to grab IP address from the modem, it will assign a default IP address which can be used for nothing, but this is called a garbage value IP address. Right? We'll switch to static here. See, now it is requesting for IP address. Now it says DHCP is successful, and what IP address is assigned? 192.168.0.100. 100 is weird. We don't know why it has got 100. We'll see that. I'll close this. We'll go to this computer, and here when you go to desktop, again it has a garbage value IP address. So what I'll do, okay, it has requested, and it is now 0.101. If you watch closely, this is 0.100 and this is 0.101. Fine. Now we'll log into the modem here. First, I'll show this in Packet Tracer, then I'll show it in my modem here. I'll open this. Fine. So this is your modem here, and you have config wherein you have LAN. The IP default gateway IP address is 0.1. Wireless, you have few basic options. In case, okay, SSID here means service set identifier. What do you mean by service set identifier? It is your Wi-Fi's name. SSID means service set identifier. That is your Wi-Fi name, and you can change your Wi-Fi name here. And authentication, whatever authentication you wanted to use, you can use. And for your information, in case if you check your Wi-Fi device, and if the authentication is WEP, please change it, because we have 3 authentications here, authentication mechanisms which is used. One is WEP, WPA, and WPA2. In case if your Wi-Fi is in configuration in WEP, a simple Android app can hack your Wi-Fi password. In case if yours Wi-Fi authentication is in WEP, because WEP is very old, and probably we are not using this WEP nowadays, but still we have few devices which have WEP configured. In case if you see this, you will have to change this to WPA2. WPA2 is a recent standard which is being used, and yes, probably when you go for this, it will be much safer, not 100%, but safer than WEP. Right? So in case if you have this enabled, change it. Okay, this is a console-based entry here. We'll go for graphical user entry here. This is how exactly it looks when you log into your Wi-Fi modem. Right? So you will have automatic configuration of DHCP, yes. And see here, IP address is 0.1, yes, that we have seen. Subnet mask is this. DHCP server is enabled. This is the first option which I told you. Yes, whenever you go for DHCP, you have to make sure your DHCP is enabled. fine, which means the server is on. DHCP server in your Wi-Fi is on. So DHCP server is enabled, and this is the scope. What is the starting IP address? See, the start IP address, what they have mentioned here is 100. That is why the computer's IP address was 192.168.0.100, and the next computer's IP address was 192.168.0.101. Right? And how many maximum users they have? Maximum users is 50. So when you have a range like this, see the IP range, DHCP scope is from 100 to 149, 100 to 149. And how many IP address do we have? We have 50 IP address here. Right? So this is a basic setting what you see here. And in case you want, you have a server in your LAN. You have a server in your LAN and you want this server's IP address to be always this 192.168.0.100, and it should be static. It should never change. Even if the lease time expires, even if this lease time, what is shown here, if it is expired, even after the lease time expires, you need the same IP address, then you can go for reservation. What is reservation? When you click reservation, probably you can assign a particular IP address to a particular device and the IP never changes. Fine. This is a very simple configuration what is given here. And when you go to wireless, you can again choose with the different options. When you go for wireless security, security mode is disabled. You can choose anything. I told you, in case if your Wi-Fi has WEP, please change that. It can be to WPA2, personal or enterprise, and encryption is AES or TKIP. You can have both. We'll go for AES. Passphrase is your Wi-Fi password. This will be your Wi-Fi password. You can assign any Wi-Fi password. So next time when a computer is trying to connect with your Wi-Fi, it will be prompted with the password. Right? And you also have a lot of other options here. Wireless MAC filter, wherein my password is open for all. My password is, everyone knows my password, but I wanted to control my Wi-Fi traffic just like this. Please listen to this carefully. MAC filtering goes like this. Even if an attacker is able to grab your Wi-Fi password. So you have devices here and your password is very simple. The password is Shankar123. This is your Wi-Fi password. And we have an attacker here. This attacker, he has grabbed your password and he is trying to connect to your Wi-Fi. Right? Now, there is a concept called MAC filtering, wherein you can use this MAC filtering. The IP address of this is A, B, C, D. Right? And this MAC address is X. Fine. The IP address of this attacker's MAC address is X. There are two possibilities here. You can enable, or no, we'll not take it as enable. We'll allow or we'll block. There are two options which you can do. Fine. If you go for allow, and give allow only these MAC address to connect, A, B, C, D. Fine. I'm giving this option in MAC filtering. Allow only the devices with the below MAC address here, A, B, C, D. Now what will happen? Even if the attacker knows the password, he knows the password, when he tries to log in and his MAC address is X and it is not in the allowed list, he will not be able to log in. Right? Or we can go for this option, wherein if you know the attacker's MAC address, we can say, okay, block this MAC address, accept this MAC address, allow all other MAC address. So only he will not be able to log in, all others will be able to log in. Fine. So we have different options in this, and MAC filter, you have advanced options. Okay, we'll stop with this. I'll go for the real-time modem here. Okay, command prompt, IP config. My IP address is this 0.3, and my default gateway, my modem's IP address is 0.1. Yes, my modem's IP address is 0.1, and in order to access this, I'll go to browser and I'll type 192.168.0.1. You can try this in your own computer, and it is asking me for a password. I'll give this login. Once if it logs in, this is my modem to which I've connected, and I'll go to LAN interface. When I go to LAN interface, see this, I have my IP address, I have IP pool range, which is DHCP scope. This is DHCP scope. So I have given this from 0.2 to 0.254. And maximum lease time is this. It is in minutes. You can convert in hours. Fine, I've given this in minutes. And domain name, yes, probably this will do. And when you go to wireless, you will get my SSID, you will get my password. I have two wireless connections here. One is this wireless one, SSID 1 and SSID 2. Fine. And probably in real time, yes, you can work with this. Now you have to understand what is this. This is DHCP scope and lease time. Fine. And DHCP server is enabled. Fine. In case if I want to change this, if I want to change my IP range from 100 to 150, yes, I can do that. So the IP address of my computer will start from 100. Fine. So I hope DHCP is clear what we have seen here until this. Now we'll go for DNS. DNS is called domain name server. Domain name server. Fine. DNS is domain name server. And why do we use DNS, or for what is the purpose of DNS here? We'll see this. Domain name system or domain name server. Okay. Okay, let me come with this. So you have a URL like this, www.facebook.com. Fine. www.facebook.com is called the URL. Here, facebook.com. Okay, facebook.com is called the domain name. This is called the URL, whereas only facebook.com is called the domain name. Right? A proper way of accessing websites is this. When you want to access websites, you have to go to the browser tab and type 23.10.1.2 or 200. You need to type the IP address of the website, and then you will have to access. This is the usual way of accessing websites. But are we accessing like this? Whenever you wanted to access a website, do you give the IP address of the website and access? Yes, the answer is no. We don't do that. Fine. Why we don't do that? Because as humans, it is very hard for us to remember all numericals like this. Numbers, it is very hard for us to remember, whereas alphabets, it is easy for us. Right? I can remember all your names, but it is tough for me to remember all your phone numbers. And that is where we have created domain names. So since we felt very difficult to remember all these IP addresses, we created for human usage, we created domain names. Fine. So domain names, that is for our understanding here. So when you go to your computer browser and when you want to access facebook.com, instead of giving IP address, what you do, you give domain name. You give facebook.com. Right? But computers, in computer world, it is all based on IP address and it doesn't understand this domain name. So what happens? We have a server which is called a DNS server. We have a DNS server here, and this DNS server is like a telephone directory. It's like a telephone directory wherein it will have domain name and IP address. So it will have, okay, facebook.com, it is 23.10.2.11. gmail.com, okay, it is 34.200.1.1, and it will have the list of all websites here. Who owns the DNS? DNS is a centralized management. If I'm using Airtel, then probably my DNS server will be from Airtel, and a lot of other DNS servers will be interconnected in internet. This goes like this, fine. So when I type facebook.com in my computer's browser, the request, it will go to the DNS server. It will grab, okay, here the IP address of Facebook is 23.10.2.1. And from here, then it will go to facebook.com, Facebook server where the IP address is 23.10.2.11. And from there, it will get you the reply back. Fine. From here, it will get you the reply back to your computer. That's how Facebook opens. Fine. This is the usual process here. Now, consider a non-technical example here. Instead of computer, you are the human here. You are a human, and you have a mobile here. This mobile is a DNS server. Mobile is a DNS server wherein it has contacts. It has all names and numbers of your friends. Mobile, yes. And whenever you want to call someone, so I'm going to call Sandeep here. So what will happen? I'll go to my mobile and I'll type Sandeep. Fine. It says calling Sandeep. It will say calling Sandeep, but the call actually goes to a number at the background. Yes. So this is a computer here, and this is a DNS server here, the mobile here. But before I go to my mobile, before I take my mobile, and before I dial Sandeep's number, I have my own memory here. Fine. I have little memory here. And I think, okay, Sandeep's number is 9894 something. Yes, I try recollecting his number, 9894. So even if you have a DNS server, the computer here has its own memory, or you can call it as a cache memory here, which also stores few of the DNS details. Fine. It also stores few of the DNS details, and this is called DNS cache. DNS cache, which will be present in your computer. So how does the flow go? The flow goes like this. When you type facebook.com, first the request goes to DNS cache. It will see if we have any entry here. If facebook.com has any IP address like this, fine. First it will go and check in its DNS cache. If there is nothing here, then it will go to this, then it will go here, and probably you will get the reply back. But sometimes your network admin or system admin can configure few things here to allow or disallow access to few websites, right? And I'll show you how to access this DNS cache and how to achieve two things. Probably this one is blocking a website. You want to block a website in your computer, you can do this, and you can do website redirection. When someone types Facebook, you can redirect them to Gmail. Fine. This can be done with DNS cache. And for this, we need to know where this DNS cache is located. DNS cache is located in your Windows. Go to your programs, Windows, System 32. You have drivers. And in drivers, you have etc, a folder called etc. And in etc, you will have a file called host. This is located in your system. I'll show you this. Fine. You have a file called host, and you can open this with the help of Notepad. For Linux, it's a different location. But for Windows, yes, you can open this with Notepad, and I'll show you this. So open up your folder here and go to this PC. Okay, C drive. You'll go to Windows. Okay, I hope this is visible now. So it is Windows and System 32. System 32 here. System 32, and then you'll go for drivers, which is here, drivers, and etc folder, and in etc we have host. We have this file called host, and you can open this file called host with Notepad, and when you open this file, you have few configurations here which is not going to work. Why? Because you have a hash. When you have a hash in front of a command or in front of any configuration like this will be commented out. So this is for our understanding, and everything is hash. They have shown us a sample example here. Fine. So I'll go down here. I'll use this loopback address. This is localhost address. This IP is like your customer care number. When you dial this number, the call doesn't go anywhere. It goes only to your customer care. Like this, when you assign anything to this particular IP address, the request never goes out of your LAN. Fine. 127.0.0.1. So what I'll do, I'll assign something like this, 127.0.0.1, and I'll type facebook.com. Facebook.com. Fine. As simple as that. When I assign a loopback address, which will never go out of my LAN, to facebook.com, and I'll save this document. Right? After saving this document, what will happen? It will, the request, when someone types facebook.com, as I told you, it will first come to DNS cache. It will go here. It will go to system32 drivers, etc host. And in this host file, what do we have? We have, yes, facebook.com has an IP address of this. So what will happen? This request will never go out and it keeps revolving inside your LAN. Right? After some time, what will happen? In your browser, it says page cannot be displayed. Fine. So you are redirecting here. Means like you are redirecting facebook.com to a local host. You can do the same. You can do the same. Now, instead of 127.0.0.1, right? Instead of that, what I do, I give Gmail's IP address here, 34.200. In case if I give this here, 34.200.1.1, logically, after saving this, what should happen? When someone types facebook.com, the request will come here. It will go to host, and in host, we have facebook.com IP address, and the IP address of facebook.com is Gmail. So what should happen? When someone types facebook.com, Gmail should open here. Yes, Gmail should open here. Okay. Gmail should open here. Fine. This you call it as website redirection. But for this, you need to run another tool from your Kali Linux for website redirection. You have to perform an attack called DNS poisoning. DNS poisoning. If you do this, yes, this is possible. But for this, you need to understand what is DNS and where do you have all these configurations, what is happening in the background. Only understanding all these things, all these concepts, probably you will be understanding what DNS poisoning is. Fine. Even if you clear your cache, you do whatever you want. If you have blocked Facebook here, 127.0.0.1, and you can list any number of websites here. Not only Facebook, you don't want anyone to access YouTube from your computer, type youtube.com, and any other sites, yes, you can include this, save this document, right? And when you try to save this document, in case if you get an error, if I try to save this, see, in case if it tries to save it in a different thing like this, what you have to do, please listen to this. Yes, you have to run with administrator privilege. What you can do, you can open Notepad. I'll close this. Don't save. I'll open Notepad. Run as an administrator. Yes. Fine. Now Notepad is opened as a run as an administrator, and I'll open this file again. I'll go to Windows system32 drivers etc, and I'll have host. I'll open this. So now when you type 127.0.0.1 and when you type facebook.com and click save, yes, now it will get saved. Right? You click save, see the document gets saved. Fine. I'll remove this. Now after this, if you try accessing facebook.com, you will not be able to access facebook.com in your computer. And in case, again, if you're able to access facebook.com, what you have to do, you have to clear your browser cache and then try it again. You will not be able to access. Yes. So this is with DNS. How is DNS used, and what is the purpose of DNS? And for DNS, for your understanding, whenever any request rises from your computer with a domain name, it obviously goes to the DNS server. And before that, it also goes to your DNS cache and checks if this is right or wrong. If you do DNS spoofing in your network, your ISP will not know that. It is for other networks. how the website block in a network. In case if you want this to be done in a network, say your network has this is the device. Your network has, as I told you, it has 50 computers here, and you want to block Facebook, anyone from accessing Facebook. You can either configure it here in your Wi-Fi modem. We have ACL, access control list. I think that is tomorrow's topic. Access control list, where you can block sites based on keywords. You can give torrent, so any site with the word called torrent will not be opened, or you can block keywords with the help of URL. Fine. This is one option here for your entire network. And in case there is one more option where you can configure DNS cache. You can configure DNS cache in your server. In your server, you can go to Windows etc and configure DNS cache file, host file, and so that it gets applied to all the computers in your LAN. Right? These are the different options here. Fine. I hope you understood this. Now, I think I'll hand over the session to Saumita. She will discuss something about dynamic routing. Hope you all have configured static routing yesterday, and today we will move on with dynamic routing. And tomorrow we'll cover switching, that is VLAN, and then we'll cover ACL for a router. And probably when you complete both of this, we'll go for NAT, and then we'll go for firewall. Fine. And I hope you guys find this session useful and interesting. And thank you. We'll meet tomorrow. And I'll now ask Saumita to take over the session. Thank you.
Okay, good morning. Is my voice audible? Yes, great. All right. So now I'm going to send you the attendance link and you can go ahead, post your attendance and come back. We'll start with dynamic routing. Yes. So okay, so I've posted the attendance link in the Zoom chat. Please go ahead and post your attendance. All right. So I hope you have given your attendance. Yes. So we'll start with the session. Cool. So yesterday we were discussing about routing, and I told you there are two types of routing. One is static routing and another one is dynamic routing. Yes. So we discussed about static routing yesterday, and I hope you all have completed the to-do as well, and I hope you found it useful. So today we'll move on with dynamic routing. Yes. So today we will move on with dynamic routing, and we saw about two things yesterday. One is known network ID and another one is unknown network ID. Yes. So for static routing, which network did we use? Known or unknown? Very good. For static routing, you used unknown networks. Yes, you found out the unknown networks and you used unknown networks to configure static routing. So today in dynamic routing, we are going to use known network IDs. Yes, we are going to use known network IDs for dynamic routing. Now, static routing is very simple. Static routing, you only have like, you don't have many types in static routing. There is just one basic configuration that you have to do for static routing. But in dynamic routing, you have three types of dynamic routing protocol. Okay, you have three types of dynamic routing protocol. And as I told you, dynamic routing is what is being configured in real time. So dynamic routing is used in real time. 1 minute. Let me close my paint and open it again. Paint. Okay. Great. So dynamic routing, and one thing which you have to remember is in dynamic routing, we are going to use the known network, and this is actually used in real time. Dynamic routing is used in real time. And okay, so in dynamic routing, as I told you, there are like many types of dynamic routing protocols. So the first one is distance vector protocol. Distance vector protocol. And in distance vector protocol, you have something called RIP. Okay. And second one is link state protocol. Link state protocol. And in link state protocol, you have OSPF. And third one is advanced distance vector protocol. And in that you have EIGRP. Okay, so you have three types of protocol. One is distance vector protocol, another one is link state protocol, and another one is advanced distance vector protocol. So in this, RIP is actually old, not mostly used or not used actually. And we have OSPF and we have EIGRP. So OSPF is also a bit old because most commonly used protocol is EIGRP. This is most commonly used. Okay, so EIGRP is most commonly used. So we will be seeing about EIGRP today, but I will tell you about RIP and OSPF also. So we'll see how RIP and OSPF works, but as in today, we'll configure EIGRP in our packet tracer. Okay, so that is what we are going to configure. Now I'll tell you about RIP. So all these routing, basically, why do we go for routing? We go for routing so that two routers can communicate with each other. That is the only purpose, where we go for routing. So that purpose is actually produced by these three routing protocols, and in that RIP, OSPF, and EIGRP has certain metrics, or it has certain criteria about transferring a packet from source to destination. Okay, so let's see how that actually works. Now let us take RIP. Now when you take RIP considers the hop count. Okay, RIP considers the hop count, and it also considers that minimum hop count is the best path. Minimum hop count is the best path. Okay, so RIP considers hop count, and also it considers the minimum hop count as the best path. Now the router's work is actually to identify the best path. As I told you, it is like identifies which path is the best path to transfer your packet from source to destination. Yes, so now RIP, what it will do is, say for example, I'll just draw a diagram here. Let's say you have one here, and you have two stops here, and you have maybe three stops here. Okay, so this 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 and this, and we'll connect this also. Okay, now in this diagram, let's consider this point is Mumbai. Okay, and let's consider this point as Chennai, and this point as Delhi. Okay, and these are all your next stops. Okay, the other things are next stops. Now my travel route is from Chennai to Mumbai. Okay, now from Chennai I wanted to go to Mumbai. Now if I wanted to go to Mumbai, see how many options I have. So I am right now here in Chennai. Yes, now if I wanted to go to Mumbai, I can go this way. When I go this way, I have 1 and 2. I have 2 hop counts. Yes, when I wanted to go this way, I have 2 hop counts. And another way is I can go this way. Yes, if I go this way, then I have 1 hop count. Yes, Delhi. So I have only one stop, Delhi. So I have 1 hop count. And I have another way. I can also go this way. If I go this way, I have 1, 2, 3, and 4 stops. Yes, I have 4 stops. Now this will actually see where there is minimum hop count. So obviously the minimum hop count path is from Chennai to Delhi to Mumbai. So Chennai to Delhi to Mumbai will be considered as the best path. Okay, so this is how RIP works. This is how RIP works. So RIP considers the minimum hop count, and that it takes as the best path. Yes. Now let's take OSPF. Now for OSPF, we'll take the same diagram. I'll just add numbers here. We'll add 10, we'll add 20, I'll add 100 here. I'll add again 20 here. I'll take 10 here, and I'll take 30 here. Okay. So OSPF. Now OSPF RIP full form is Routing Information Protocol. Yes, I've written it here. RIP is Routing Information Protocol, and OSPF full form is Open Shortest Path First. Yes, Vikram, don't worry. I'll send you the attendance link after the session. Please attend the session right now. Okay. So we have OSPF. OSPF is Open Shortest Path First, and what OSPF considers is the bandwidth. OSPF considers the bandwidth. Okay, and in bandwidth it considers the maximum bandwidth as the best path. Maximum bandwidth as the best path. Bandwidth in the sense like that, maybe you can take example for bandwidth as the road size. Yes, the road size that you travel. So like you can take small roads and you can take big roads. So the travel time depending on the road size, it differs. So OSPF considers that the maximum bandwidth is the best path. Now how does it consider? See here. Now same for from Chennai to Mumbai. From Chennai to Mumbai, if you wanted to identify the best path, it will first see this way. When it goes, you have 10 and you have 20, so the maximum bandwidth is 30 here. Yes, and in case if you wanted to go this way through Delhi, you have 100, so 100 is the maximum bandwidth. And in case if you wanted to go this way, then you have 30 plus 10 40, 40 plus 20 is 60, and 60 plus 100 is 160. So now the maximum bandwidth is in which path? It is actually in this path. So OSPF considers that this path will be the best path. Okay, so it will select 160 and it will consider that as the best path. So that is with OSPF. So OSPF considers the bandwidth and it considers maximum bandwidth as the best path. RIP considers the hop count and it considers minimum hop count as the best path. Okay, but the most commonly used protocol is EIGRP, because EIGRP also considers bandwidth plus it considers the delay time. That is the time taken. The time taken to reach destination from source. It considers the travel time also. So it will see where it has the minimum time. Yes, and it will take that path as the best path. So it will also see the bandwidth and it will also see the travel time. And that is why EIGRP is most commonly used protocol, used everywhere. Yes, so EIGRP full form is Enhanced Interior Gateway Protocol. EIGRP is Enhanced Interior Gateway Protocol. OSPF is Open Shortest Path First, and RIP is Routing Information Protocol. Yes, so these are the three types of dynamic routing protocols. And yes, you can actually configure RIP, OSPF, and EIGRP. You have configuration steps for all three. Yes, but today we'll be seeing only about EIGRP. Okay, because that is the most common protocol and we'll focus only on that. Apart from that, OSPF, RIP, yes, you can attend all that. Okay, I mean, you can work on that. So I'll tell you how EIGRP works. EIGRP. So for EIGRP, you have to consider one thing, only one thing, called autonomous number. Autonomous number. Okay, so autonomous number is nothing but it is any number between 0 to 65,535. Okay, autonomous number is any number between 0 to 65,535. It can be any number. Okay, and this autonomous number should be same for all routers. Same for all routers. Okay, so there is an autonomous number for EIGRP. To configure EIGRP, you have to concentrate on autonomous number, and this autonomous number is any number between 0 to 65,535, and it should be same for all routers. Yes, Dhruv, you're right. It's total port. The total port count is also 0 to 65,535, and autonomous number, the range is also the same range. Yes. Now say for example, you have three routers. Okay, you have three routers, and in case for router A, you have router ABC. In case for router A, if you are assigning autonomous number as 100, then for router B it should be 100, and for router C it should be 100. Okay, so for all the routers, the autonomous numbers should be same. Now, why do we keep this same? What is the purpose of keeping an autonomous number same? There comes your concept called BGP. So this is not a topic from CCNA, it is a topic from CCNP, which we will not be discussing in the session, but I'll tell you what concept this is. Now, say for example, take Airtel. Okay, take Airtel network. So Airtel, you have Airtel in Tamil Nadu, you have Airtel in Kerala also. Yes, so you have Airtel routers in Tamil Nadu. Say suppose there is around 10,000 routers in Tamil Nadu, and you also have Airtel routers in Kerala. Okay. Now Airtel comes with a package. Airtel comes with a package stating that people who wanted to communicate in Tamil Nadu, say mobile to mobiles, it is coming with a scheme for 5 paise. Okay, so mobile to mobile, if anyone is trying to contact, it is giving a scheme for 5 paise. Now, in case if Airtel wanted to apply this for all the Tamil Nadu routers, then this will happen with the help of autonomous number, because the autonomous number will be same for all the routers. Okay, that is why we keep autonomous number same. Okay, again for Kerala routers, there is going to be different autonomous number. Say now for Airtel router, if you're going to have 100, for Kerala you have 200. But see from Tamil Nadu, you are also able to make calls to Kerala people, and Kerala people are able to make calls to you, which means you can establish connection between these two routers as well. That is routers with different autonomous number as well. This concept is called BGP, Border Gateway Protocol. Okay, I'll tell you once again. So autonomous number is nothing but a number that is same for all the routers. Yes, and why do we keep this number same for all the routers? In case you wanted to implement something in all the routers, then you take the help of autonomous number. So using autonomous number, you are implementing a scheme or anything to all the routers. Yes, so this is EIGRP. This particular thing is EIGRP. That is, you concentrate only on Tamil Nadu. Now, there is also something called Kerala router. And if you wanted to make Tamil Nadu router and Kerala router communicate, then you go with a concept called BGP. So BGP is a concept from CCNP. That is an advanced, networking concept. But that is also very simple. Yes, so understand BGP's protocol is actually for this. But today we will be concentrating only on EIGRP. Okay, so EIGRP configuration is really very simple. So I'll tell you how simple is that. But the assignment which you're going to do today is the same assignment as you did yesterday. So you are going to have 3 routers, router A, router B, and router C. A, B, and C. And all these 3 routers are going to have switch. BGP expand is Border Gateway Protocol. It is Border Gateway Protocol. Okay, so this is the to do which you're going to do for today. Same template which you used yesterday. Yes, and in that you're going to configure EIGRP. So we'll assign IP. So obviously this computer IP, we'll keep it as 1.10, this as 1.1, this as 2.1, this as 2.2, this is 3.1, this is 4.1, 4.2, 5.1, 3.10, and 5.10. Okay, so we'll assign IP for all this. Now, EIGRP configuration, you have to do it in all 3 routers. Just like how you did static routing for all 3 routers, you're going to do it for EIGRP also. And the command is very simple. So the command for EIGRP is this: you have to configure in command line only. You cannot do it in graphical user interface. You can go with command line. Normally how you assign IPs, you go into configure terminal mode. The same way you have to do. Say now for example, open router A. In router A, go to command line. Yes, so in command line, it is going to ask you to log in, and then it is going to ask you to enter into configure terminal, and all the commands that you're going to type will be in configure terminal mode only. Okay, so this. Now what you have to do is you have to type EIGRP commands. So to do EIGRP commands, see the steps are. The steps, first you have to type router and then type EIGRP, and you're going to give a number. See, I'll give 100. So this 100 is your autonomous number. Okay, and now we are actually seeing dynamic routing. So we are going to take known networks. Now for router A, tell me what are all the known networks. For router A, tell me what are all the known networks. That is, the interface which is directly connected will be your known network. So obviously it is 1.1 and 2.1. So it is 1.0 and 2.0, which is the known network for router A. Excellent. So tell me for router B. For router B, what are all the known networks? Very good. So it is 2.0, 3.0, and 4.0. And for router C, what are all the known networks? Excellent. So it is 4.0 and 5.0. Yes. So now we are going to fill in all these known networks. Once you have assigned router EIGRP 100, what you're going to do is you have to just type one command, that is network, and type on the network ID 192.168.1.0. And then next line, again go ahead and type network 192.168.2.0. And next line, that's it. So exit. Okay. And same way for router B. For router B, again you have to go to configure terminal mode and you have to give router EIGRP and the autonomous number should be same. So again I'm giving 100. And after I give 100, I'll type network. So it is 192.168.2.0. Again, the next line, I'll type network 190 network 192.168.3.0, and again I'll type network 192.168.4.0, and then you give exit. And for router C, again you will go to configure terminal mode, you'll type router EIGRP and you will type the same autonomous number 100, and you have to type network 192.168.4.0, and you have to type the next line, this network 192.168.5.0, and click on exit. Enter, exit. That's it. So now you have configured EIGRP for all the three routers. Okay. So once all the three routers are done, what you have to do is you have to verify. So you have to verify, and the verification, it is that from this computer from 1.10, you should be able to ping to 3.10 and 5.10. You have to get a reply. From 3.10, you should be able to get reply from 1.10 and 5.10. And from 5.10, you should be able to get reply from 1.10 and 3.10. If you are getting a reply, then the concept is correct. Okay, so I will also show this to you in Packet Tracer. Yes, we will see how to implement this in Packet Tracer. And so I get many doubts regarding the other numbers. I'll tell you all that. But before that, I'll tell you about Packet Tracer. In Packet Tracer, so we'll go with routers. Yesterday, many people came up with asking doubts that you were not able to find out WIC2T and all. So go with 2 series. See, you have many types of router here. You can choose a series that starts from 2. Okay, so I'll take 3 routers, router 1, router 2, and router 3. Okay, and obviously it is not going to have serial interface. So what I'll do is I'll turn off the router and I'll go down. I have WIC2T. I'll place it here and I'll turn it on. And same way, I'll go here, turn it off, WIC2T, drag it and turn it on. And here, I'll go here, WIC2T. I have to turn it off, WIC2T, place it here and turn it on. Okay, so I've added it. Now you have to connect all these 3 routers. So let's take serial DT, and it is serial 0/0 and it is serial 0/0. Again from here it is serial 0/1 and to serial 0/0. Okay, so now you have 3 routers with you. Okay, and for all these 3 routers, how you will be configuring is you will go to command line. Yes, would you like to enter into configuration mode? No. Click on enter. It will go into the login mode. Click on EN and it will go to privilege mode. Type conft and it will go to configuration mode. Okay, now here in this configuration, you're going to type router EIGRP and you'll type autonomous number as 100. And then you have to add the known network IDs. So for router A, you have 1.0 and 2.0. So what we will do is we'll type network 192.168.1.0 and hit on enter. And again, it is network 192.168.2.0. Click on enter and give exit. And that's it. Okay, so the same way you have to configure for all the other two routers. Okay, for other two routers, you will do the same process, and then you will try pinging from one computer to another computer. So this is about EIGRP. EIGRP, so to summarize, this is the most commonly used protocol, and where you use autonomous number, and all the autonomous number for the routers should be same. It can be any number. You can also have 200, 300 if you want. It can be any number. It is not that you should have 100 only. Any number between 0 to 65,535 is well and good. Okay, and this is the configuration for EIGRP. Okay, so I hope this is clear. So you have two to-dos for today, I hope. One is with Shankaza's class, and another one is this dynamic routing. So you will be submitting two to-dos today. Okay, so once done, you can share that in Skype group if you want. And if you have any doubt, you can also ask that in Skype group. Yes, thank you.